How did countenance evolve to mean support or approval? OED, the extension of sense from mean, aspect, to face, appears to be English. Compare French use of mine, etymon line 4, countenance, v, late 15c, to behave or act, from countenance, n. Sense of, to favor, patronize, is from 1560s, from notion of, to look upon with sanction or smiles, etymon line 4, countenance, n, mid, 13c, from Old French countenance, demeanor, bearing, conduct, from Latin continentia, restraint, abstemiousness, moderation, literally, way one contains oneself, from continentum, present participle of contenere, see contain. Meaning evolving Middle English from appearance to facial expression betraying a state of mind to face itself, late 14c. Please help me dig deeper than the definition, which I already understand and so ask not about. I heed the etymological fallacy. But what are some right ways of interpreting the etymology to make it feel reasonable and intuitive? 1. Particularly, how did the meaning, that I bolded, evolve? 2. OED doesn't answer 1, but how does its reference to French, which I quoted, matter here?
I believe we derived it from the phrase to keep someone in countenance, which means to help someone to remain calm and confident, or sort of to help them retain a good face. The word countenance comes from the Old French word countenance, meaning bearing, behavior, from contenere, from which we also derive the modern word contain. Contenere comes from the Latin contenere, whose meaning can be broken down into two parts. The first being prefix con, which comes from the Latin word cum, meaning with, and then the second being the Latin word tenere, which means to have, or to hold. The early sense of the Old French word countenance was bearing, demeanor, also facial expression, hence the face. P.S. The present, active, participle of contenere is continens, continentum in the unnecessary inflection of continens into the accusative masculine singular. Also I have no clue why they, the website referenced above, would choose the accusative masculine singular. It would be easier to give it in its simplest form. From an enthusiastic Latin student. We can follow the development of countenance, starting with the etymology of contain. Late 13th c, from Old French contin dash, stem of contenere, from Latin contenere, transitive, to hold together, enclose, from come together, see come, plus tenere to hold, see tenit. Moving step by step, through the etymology of countenance. V. Late 15th c, to behave or act, from countenance, n. Sense of, to favor, patronize, is from 1560s, from notion of, to look upon with sanction, or smiles. And in mid 13th c, from Old French continence, demeanor, bearing, conduct, from Latin continentia, restraint, abstemiousness, moderation, literally, way one contains oneself, from continentum, present participle of contenere, see contain. Meaning evolving Middle English, from appearance, to facial expression betraying a state of mind, to face itself, late 14th c. Noun formation, from contenere, by way of continentum, to continentia. Literally the way one contains oneself. Restraint, moderation. Generalization from restraint, to Old French continence, conduct, bearing, demeanor. Generalization from demeanor, to Middle English countenance, appearance. Specialization from appearance, to facial expression. Generalization from facial expression, to face. Verb conversion from conduct, to modern English countenance, behave, act. Specialization from behave and facial expression, to favor. The final step of the verb, to favor, was driven by the particular facial expressions of favor, which are an intuitive factor in the interpretation of behavior.
The confusion over the etymology of countenance is a direct result of mistranslations in Genesis 4 verses 4 to 5 KJV. For and Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. 5, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. Respect was never correctly translated. At that time in history, respect meant payment in kind, from the Latin word specie meaning coin. This URL When Cain didn't receive respect, payment in kind of coins of equal value, his countenance fell. As you can see from most of the previous answers, there is no clear etymological connection between face and countenance other than the reference the KJV circa 16th century. Obviously, most of the other scholars ignored the real root of countenance, count, and tried to force some other meanings to match the mistranslations of KJV. From Middle English counten, from Anglo-Norman conter, from Old French conter, add up, tell a story, from Latin computere, present active infinitive of computo. You then add the suffix ance, meaning the action or process of doing something, to the Middle English counten, and you have created the word countenance from Genesis 4 KJV. Our timeline for the word now works well. Middle English, 1066 to 1500, counten is enumerating and countenance is the process of enumerating. Then the KJV is translated from 1604 to 1611, and that is when the first instance of counten or count or caunt had anything to do with a face. You can study the etymologies of any variation of count, caunt, con, etc., and you will never find a connection to the word face or anything like it. There are other words mistranslated in the verses. There is no evidence of fat referencing subcutaneous tissue before Middle English. Derma and its variants had been the accepted root for flesh or skin for quite a long time at that point. Fat and pat had an unwavering connection to the words father and paternal from at least 3500 BC. If fat is father, and thereof means origin, then fat thereof seems to mean paternal origin. That makes a lot more sense in relation to the phrase firstlings of the flock than referencing the origin of its subcutaneous tissue. When I consider that the first use of the word sheep in reference to a lamb or a US KJV, it leads me to other ideas about why the Genesis account, KJV, called Abel a keeper of sheep instead of shepherd. Tiller of the ground means tiller or tailor of the ground loom, and Cain's offering of the fruit of the ground would be fruit of the loom. In keeping with the weaving theme, Cain was said to slay Abel, but slay almost certainly didn't mean to kill, until the 14th century. At that time, and still today, slay, and slay were the reeds of a loom or the thread count of woven fabrics. Another reference to weaving and counting. This URL. Unfortunately, references to weaving in the primitive languages of that area are almost always mixed in with references to storytelling as weaving reality on a loom. It's hard to tell if Cain was a weaver or a storyteller, probably a bit of both, but he was most definitely not a farmer.
Countenance.